Hey everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. I hope you're all doing great today. So we are going to make some Valentine's Day theme pens. This one should be pretty fun. Now I realized I'm going to have to switch out some of the blanks in the Pen Blank Club because I'd rather get these Valentine's Day ones out than the Fire and Ice. So the Fire and Ice ones that we did a couple times ago, those are going to go into next month's box. It doesn't, I always forget, like I need to be like 2 months in advance for these holidays and stuff. So hopefully this should work out pretty good though. So you guys will be getting them, the boxes will be going out Friday, I think, next week. So it should work out pretty good, and you'll have the Valentine's Day blanks to make for Valentine's Day. And then, like I said, the Fire and Ice ones don't really have any specific timing on them, I don't think. So I'm just going to hold those off, and they'll go into the next box. So it should be pretty fun. Hopefully, like I said, everybody's doing good today. We are going to do just some regular blanks. We're going to use the Beast mold, and I had some ideas about how to make these. I've made, different types of Valentine's Day blanks in the past. I do have a hearts box that's like a 3D print, and it has little hearts in it. It's okay, it's fine. I don't love doing those boxes. It's very tedious, so I'd rather just, not my thing really. I'd rather just make some swirls and have some fun with it personally. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna use the Beast. We're gonna do a 12 blank pour. Now what I thought might be kind of cool. So obviously we're gonna go for red and white. You could do like pink, there's all kinds of different colors that you could put. I'm like, I kind of like the red and white thing. So I was pulling out some stuff, and I have this really cool looking glitter, kind of like that. It looks like my camera is like super slow. I think I updated my software. What is going on here? You guys seeing like a really slow camera movement? That's weird. Anyway, hopefully that's not a problem. Anyway, so we'll do a little bit of this red glitter. I thought we could maybe even toss in a little bit of Yamagata red with that. So we got a little bit of pearl, a little bit of glitter all in one. And that's kind of cool. Like, a lot of times we tend to do like, okay, let's get some colors. So we pull out pearls, or we're like, I want glitter in there. And so you just use glitter. You can combine all these things. The other thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of red, just translucent dye to the entire mix. So that's going to be our red. I think that'll be kind of fun. I was thinking maybe we could throw in a little bit of interference red. That'll give that kind of that, I don't know, it gives like an aurora looking effect. Like it just creates something different. So I thought we'd do that as like a separate color in between the red and white. And then for white, we'll add a little bit of dye, and then I'm not sure which way to go on this. So the Shide, whatever. This one's like a micro pearl, very fine particles. And then you got the macro sparkle, is kind of like big chunks, almost like a glitter. And I'm not sure which way to go on this, so I'm going to let you guys pick. We are going to open up a poll. Here we go, start a poll. We're going to do Shida or macro. And that's going to go with the white dye. So we'll do macro, and then we'll do Shida. I would say that like the Shida is going to be more like, if you like pearl, like, like a pearl. It really creates kind of more of the finer kind of like that marble look. Whereas macro sparkle is going to be very sparkly and glittery looking. Both look good. I think if I had to pick, I don't want to skew the results, put whatever you want, but I think I'd probably go with the Shida. Just like I said, it doesn't factor into anything. They're both going to look good, but that would be my pick, I think, going into it. But I'm not sure. So I thought let's do a little bit of a poll, see what you guys think about that, and we'll let it roll. Should be kind of fun. So let's see here. Cold Alaska. Yeah, I bet. It's pretty cold here lately too. We had a storm. I actually got to go up and go snowboarding, and it went pretty well overall. Luckily, there was a storm right before the night before, which, unlike a normal year, especially like by this time in January, usually I've been warmed up. This year has been terrible up in Tahoe. I mean, we didn't get any snow in December until like Christmas or something. It was terrible. It was like dry. There was like one run open everywhere, maybe. So we were playing catch up on the snow, but it was good conditions on Thursday. And it was pretty fun. The knee held up pretty well. My legs got a little tired, and I thought, it's probably best to just cash it in early and then pick it up next week. We're going up to Tahoe next week also. So for anybody that's ordering blanks, orders are going to go out on Friday next week. I'm not going to be in the shop. So anyway, it was a fun day. The only issue was, and it's funny because usually I'm all about getting snow the day before I go, but they didn't groom it, and so it was pretty choppy, and that was actually the worst thing on my knee. Like the juddery kind of stuff sometimes. It didn't love that. But other than that, the knee held up pretty well, no problems, and it was very fun. So it's good to be back up there. So let's see here. What do we got going on? Is there anything else that I missed up a little higher up? I can't see under the pole thing, so I don't know what you guys were talking about up there. Let's see. I don't think I'm missing anything. I think so. Nice. All right, so like I said, we'll just wait and see. Again, for anybody that's just joining the fun, we got a poll going. We're going to do red, like red and white, but we're also going to throw in a interference red in the middle, like as a separate thing. We're not going to. One thing you also could do with the interference is maybe add that to the. I don't think I would want to add it to the red as like a dirty pour or something like that. I think it would kind of wash out the red a little bit more. But you could toss it in with the white and you'd get kind of a weird, like a little bit of a banding effect. I think in this case, I actually want a little bit more. It's all going to kind of blend together. So it's not going to be like there's going to be, big blobs of interference. But I think you'll have a little bit more interference red parts. And, when you're looking at interference powder, if you just made a blank that was interference red, for instance, it would look kind of like pearly white. It's kind of like a milky white. But as you move it, as the light hits it, it's going to kind of give off this almost like aurora effect, like looking thing. Like you'll just see this kind of hint of red kind of glowing off of it. And so hopefully we'll have, some white, and then we'll have this like whitish, but with like a little bit of a red glow to it. And then, red. And we're going to throw in some glitter in addition to our Yamagata. So it should be pretty good. Yeah, you can't go wrong with Yamagata red. It is literally my favorite. And, one of my little secrets, like I said, I like adding a little bit of translucent red to the mix. Yamagata red on its own is really good, but if you add that translucent red, it like almost makes it look like candy apple red. Like it brings out almost a metallic look. On top of the pearl kind of thing. So it's a pretty cool. If you guys have not interference, if you have the Lumilite, the translucent red in Yamagata, give it a try sometime. It really makes that red just even more vibrant than the Yamagata on its own. But I really like Yamagata. There's been a lot of reds, but it's hard to get like a red, like really red color in micas. I haven't seen too many of them. Usually they end up being more like a maroon. There's like a little blue in them, and they're darker kind of. But the Yamagata, eye candy. They do it well. So we are going to wrap up the poll, I think, here. We're going to click on that. Looks like everybody kind of agreed with me. Like I said, the Sheeta, if that's how you say it, I'm not sure, is a good one. Like it's a little bit more, like I said, that kind of marbly, just like when you look at a pearl, like a real pearl, that's kind of what you get. And that's opposed to like, there's like Snow White, and I don't know what the just general white is for eye candy, but like just like a white pearl kind of thing. They're a slightly larger mica particle than the Sheeta. Sheeta's like powdered sugar. I mean, they're like super fine particles. And you could maybe kind of say that about, this kind of looks like powdered sugar too, but a lot of the pearl whites are, and I will actually say Snow White is actually, I think, I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but it appears to me that the particle size of Snow White is actually a little bit on the smaller side compared to just like pearl white in general. Or I don't know everything about mica powders, but that's what I feel like is going on. And then you got like the Sheeta or the micro pearl. Those are like super fine particles, like literally it's like you're dumping powdered sugar in there. Sometimes those super fine particles can be kind of clumpy, so you really got to give it extra stirring to make sure that you don't have these like big clumps of mica in there in the bottom. Dark red metallic. Yeah, more burgundy. And I'm trying to think, there's other ones. Well, and like P-Town's got like wine red, which is, that's the kind of, this is similar to a lot of the other reds that have been out there. And I don't even claim to have looked at, there's too many mica powder companies out there for me to be like, oh, let me keep an eye on everybody's micas. There's just too many. I'd rather kind of focus on, a couple brands. Pearl X has been one that I've used for a long time. They've been around forever. And they got a lot of colors, but they're a little bit more, I don't know, yesterday's micas, it feels like. Eye Candy is really, they got so many colors and they really do a great job. But P-Town, Fred just picked like some of the best possible micas that are out there. They don't have a huge line, but the ones that they have are just excellent. So I like to switch between P-Town and Eye Candy. And it also helps, obviously, Turner's carries them, so I like to support them. But if I'm going to pick a couple, I may as well pick the ones that they have, as long as they're good and they're top quality. So, but there's so many. Illumilite sells it, and they got like Polycolor now. They've gone through like 3 different brands. But anyway, so our poll results are Sheeta at 73%, Macro Sparkle. We've done a lot with the Macro lately anyway, so I'm not entirely surprised you guys picked that. All right, so I think that's about it. I think we can probably get going. It's going to be a little bit of a short one today. We're actually having Christmas today with Gretchen's family, so I got to get down to Gardnerville after the stream kind of early. So we're going to do just this one, but I think it should be full of fun. And I'm very happy with the fireworks. And a lot of people have been asking that aren't in the pen blank club, hey, are you going to sell those? And, I like to try to keep most of the ones that we do for the pen blank club exclusive, at least for a little while. I had so much fun doing, just playing with all the different glitters and just packing it full of so many different things. I'll probably revisit that for the folks that aren't in the pen blank club. I'll probably revisit that down the road, give it a few months, and then come back. Maybe even do it for like 4th of July kind of thing. Do like a fireworks theme type thing. Probably do it a little bit differently because, I was just kind of pulling out random glitters. And so we can maybe do a little bit more of a themed type of thing for the 4th of July, but kind of do kind of the same thing. So be looking for those down the road. We'll pull them back out and do some fun fireworks. I thought that was pretty cool. So let's head to the overhead view here. I'll zoom in a little bit, just a little bit. And we'll get things rolling. So again, I'm looking at this like 3 colors in a sense, 3 different cups, and we'll just do the normal pouring. And there's all kinds of ways you could pour things together. Of course we could do dirty pours and things like that. And then there's, like the split cups, and you can have fun with that, or you could do like 2 cups at a time. That works as well. Over the years, for the most part, the single cup at a time, it works. Give it a little stir and you're good to go. Like it seems to work pretty well. It's pretty simple. The one thing I will say about like the 2-cup pour method, if you're if you're not very articulate with 2 hands, it can get a little crazy. But I will say, if you practice that, eventually you'll get it. And really, even if you make a mess and it goes all over the place, it still ends up, kind of being somewhat similar to if you're doing it 1 cup at a time. I think you can get a little bit more of like, I don't want to say like, well, you can get like blobbiness, a little bit more like bigger chunks of color if you do single cup. Depends on the timing, the temperature, and the thickness of the resin and all that kind of stuff. But I think you can get a little bit more of that like separate kind of colors, because you're almost kind of doing a little bit more of a stacking thing. Whereas if you're doing 2 cups at a time, they're both kind of going in there at the same time. It works pretty well. There's no, I don't think there's any better or right answer to pouring these things, but I would say if you're doing two at a time, you may be less likely to need to swirl it up. It's already kind of swirling at least 2 colors at a time. So that is one advantage maybe. You could maybe get it done a little quicker doing multiple cups at a time as well. If you're really crazy, you can pull out paper cups and like smash them all together and kind of, it's almost like doing a split cup. But if you can get the I don't really want to smash these, but if you squeeze them all, you can almost hold like, you know, a couple colors per hand and get those spouts as close as possible. I find it's kind of hard to do that into like a 3/4 inch hole sometimes, but you can possibly get like 4 colors or maybe even more, especially depending on the thickness of the cup and size of it, all at once, kind of pouring everything going crazy. All right, so let's get a bucket out. Let's get our notepad out as well. Get these things out of the way. So, what have you guys been working on? What's going on in your shop? That's the question. Randy was unable to find that red. Which red? The translucent or the Yamagata? Yamagata, Turner's has that, and then you can get the Alumilite dye. I'm pretty sure Turner sells Alumilite dyes as well as Alumilite.com. And just, it's their, you know, translucent red, they call it. It's totally see-through. So that's, you know, it depends on what you're doing. You may want to go with like more of like a pigment, either paste or you know, like liquid pigment type thing, like Divine Pigments or, you know, my Color Lab. That's a little bit different than these translucents. They're more like a dye, very fine particles that you can see through. All right, I need my pen, and we're gonna do, let's see, this is where we're at. So today is, wow, the days are already just rolling off the calendar again. Valentine's Day. We're doing the Beast mold. That's a 12 blank mold. Turner's is out of the vertical molds right now, but they should be getting stocked back up soon. I'm waiting. Oh, and the other thing is I was waiting for pressure pots to get back, and Turner's has all the pressure pots back in stock. So just to let you know, if you need, you know, a 2.5 or a 5, they even have a 10-gallon, kind of a short squat one for like bowl blanks and bigger, you know, like shorter things and more. If you wanted, it's like a bigger diameter pot, but shorter. So they got all those back in stock now, just to let everybody know. But they don't have the vertical molds yet, but they should be coming soon. And if you want to get them like right away, you can also just go to ptownsubby.com. They've got, I think they've got all of them in stock there. I usually wait because I get cheaper shipping from Phoenix, so I just order from Turner's usually. But since they don't have them, you know, just head over to P-Town if you need molds. All right, so this thing holds about, I'm gonna go 550 grams. You can get away with 540 on this, but sometimes there's a little less, and that way it'll give us a little extra to dump into our cup thing. And we're just gonna go for, I'm gonna do a little bit less interference red, but pretty much kind of like a 50-50 mix type deal between red and white. So let's just say, I think we could probably just do, let's see, yeah, I think we could just do like 100. Is that enough? Yeah, I think we could do 100 grams of the interference red. So I'll just stop there, you know, like figure out that number, and then I'm just going to split the rest of it in half, which will be 225 and 225. I'm going to do my math. 225 times 2. Yeah, 450. Okay, 550. We're good. I don't want to short it again. So let's see here. We're doing red. It's going to be Yamagata. Let's see. How am I going to do this? We're going to do... We'll do 1 teaspoon of Yamagata plus, I'm going to see what a half teaspoon looks like of the, what is this stuff? The glitter. It's an apple red glitter. Plus, we'll add like 0.5 grams of red dye. And then for the white, let's see here, we're doing 225. We'll do like 1 gram of white dye plus probably another teaspoon of the Shida. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Could probably do a little less. It depends on, now the problem, if you're going to mix the mica with dye, you need to balance those. You want to have very little dye. I just find that adding this the white, pigment dye stuff to a white, mica powder kind of thing makes it even whiter. It brings it more white. It's a little bit like duller looking if it's just the mica powder. Either way, it doesn't matter, but I kind of like that whiter, brighter. It's brighter. I guess that might be a better way to explain it than if I just used the Shida. So like I said, I'm using like a very small, very low amount of this dye. This stuff is very opaque. And so if you put too much of the dye in, you're not really going to get much pearl effect. And it's still going to knock down the pearl effect no matter what you do if you're adding this opaque dye. But it still doesn't kill it as long as you balance it well. So I think, in fact, I think what I'm going to do is we're going to start with actually a half a gram of the white dye and 1 teaspoon of the Shida. I think actually I talked myself into that. We'll put a little less dye in there. It's still going to give it a little bit of brightness just because the white dye is so bright. But I want to get a good pearly effect going on. So we'll zero this guy out. Jake's in the house. What's up, man? Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Mark's working on some shelves. Nice. Well, actually, speaking of things that we're kind of working on or whatever, so I got that little drill bit sharpening machine. I'm just literally took it out of the box like 5 minutes before the stream just to look at it. But it's made by Weaver. I don't want to share too much. There are different models, and I picked a very specific one for what I want to do. I think it's kind of the best option, but it's a pretty nice little machine. Like, it's heavy duty. I like that, and I know a lot of people said that the Drill Doctor works. There's so many people that don't like it that I just haven't felt like I want to pull the trigger on that one. So I'm going to give this a shot. It wasn't too terribly expensive. It ain't cheap, but it's also not thousands of dollars. And if it works well, I'll let you guys know if I'm getting pretty decent results. The other thing for me is I can share this with my dad who, he does machine work. And he's got tons of drill bits that he needs sharpened. I don't necessarily go through that many drill bits. I mean, really. However, what I've always wanted is a very quick, easy, and good way to just touch up drill bits, because the problem is when you start noticing that it's dulling, it's dull. Like, you really need to touch them up then, especially if you're doing certain things. Like, you really need a good sharp drill bit. We were talking about last week, I kind of mentioned that, a couple people had blanks that kind of cracked or had issues when they were turning them of mine. And usually, many times, it's one of two things. It's the drilling. You overheat it during drilling. And so if your drill bit is starting to feel dull, it's generating more heat with the friction because it's not sharp. So you're much better off using a sharp drill bit. Now, in most cases, you can kind of get away with it for a while until it's like dull. And you're like having to force it into the material. At that point, you need to stop and go get a new drill bit or sharpen it. But you can kind of get away with it for a while. However, for certain types of blanks, I was showing you the Yankee, you know, things where you've got resin and, you know, some other material in there. And I'm just going to bring a few examples over here to kind of just little random things. Pretty much anything that you're putting a different material in with the resin, that's where you start really running into problems. If you got wood or you got little chunks of, this one was just like little cut up pieces of, I think, blanks and stuff. You got even the 3D printed honeycomb, you got aluminum honeycomb, I think that's what that is here. That might, yeah, I think so. And then, you know, another couple of 3D prints. So if you're mixing materials like that, the problem is, again, resin doesn't like chemically burn into itself or other materials. It is just a mechanical bond. It's just holding on for dear life, basically. And if you start overheating the blank or generating a lot of heat, that bond can easily crack, and it may not be apparent when you're drilling it, or you know, until you get to turning it, then it blows up. And which is why I like doing the super thin stuff on the inside, because if there are any instabilities or areas where that bond isn't very good, hopefully that super thin glue will kind of leach in there and kind of glue it back together for you. But you know, you're best off just using the sharpest drill bit you can and not, you know, take a little cut and then pull it out and clear the chips all the time and all that. Always best to do it that way when you're dealing with pen blanks, for sure. So let's see here. Who else is working on some stuff here? We got David pulled his spindle out of the lathe. Oh no, that's no fun. Oh, no fun at all. You got it all back. It is a learning experience. Oh yeah, you got to watch the antler handles. Definitely respirator in that case. Cool. All right. So anyway, I just wanted to see what you guys were working on, doing, what things were happening. All right. So 540. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up. I'm going to add a little extra. So we're doing, actually it's 550. So that's 275. I'm going to actually write this in here. 275 times 2. But I'm going to add a little bit of extra because I don't want to, I would personally rather dish it out into 3 different cups. The advantage to doing that, you can use the mixing cup. The only thing that could happen, and it's probably not totally likely, but I actually, it's happened to me in the past. If you use the cup that you mixed in, you could have there may be something that you missed, especially if you're using a cup that's got a bunch of ridges and junk in it to mix it with. Like I said, I still do it sometimes, but you're kind of better off dumping it into a different cup. That way, anything that's unmixed is staying in the mixing cup and you're putting that to the side. That's not going in your mold. And even if you dumped in something where there was some, just like a couple little parts that just weren't mixed together that well, you're going to dump it in a new cup and then start stirring that again. So you're like double mixing kind of thing. And usually what ends up happening is the stuff that doesn't get mixed together tends to usually be stuck in like little holes here, you know, these little ridges and things, or on the sides of the cup or the corners. So if you use a mixing cup and then dump it all out, you're going to waste a little bit of resin, but you're almost guaranteed that you're not going to have any little unmixed parts. And what ends up happening is, and I've seen this in the past, especially apparent with dyes, liquid dyes, if there's a blob of unmixed resin, you know, and then your blank cures and you turn it, you may cut into something where there's like dye comes out. And in some cases it's unavoidable. You know, there may just random chance. You may see that once in a while, even if you do the separate cups, but your chances of that happening are reduced like significantly if you do that. So anyway, that's all to say that I'm going to add a little extra. Let's see, 280. And the reason I'm adding extra is because I'm not going to get every single drop out of this cup to transfer into the other cups. And I find like about 10 grams is usually what ends up kind of lingering on the sides of the cup. So I usually just add 5 to each side and we're good to go. Sneaking up on it here. I like to go a little over with the part B. Not much. Just got in the habit of it. And that only goes for Alumilite Clear Slow. Don't do that with anything else. Follow the manufacturer's recommended guidelines. But when it comes to Alumilite Clear Slow, you can add just a little bit of part B, a little extra, like a gram maybe or so, half a gram. If you really want to. Especially I would recommend doing that if you're mixing up a very small amount of resin. Clear Slow really wasn't intended to be poured in very small amounts in the first place. And what can happen is you can get some little white streaks. It doesn't really affect the blank, it's still hard, cured and everything. It's just you get these it's called blushing, they call it. And especially if you're going for something clear, it's going to ruin your casting. So sometimes adding a little extra part B can kind of help with that, but realistically, if you're going for very, very small things, I would just pull out the regular clear. You're not going to have that issue. It was made to be poured in whatever, but it can't handle giant pours. That's what the Clear Slow is intended for like bowl blanks, huge amounts poured all at once. And so effectively what's going on is that blushing is caused because the resin, if you don't mix enough of it up, it's not generating enough heat. It still cures fine, but that heat issue causes the blushing in the blanks. So sometimes adding a little extra part B can kind of help eliminate some blushing. But like I said, if very, very small pours, I don't know that there's anything, if you could heat it up in the pot, type thing. Heating the mold sometimes helps, but really you're better off just choosing a resin that's made to be poured small amounts. All right, so we got, let's see here, we're doing, in fact, I'm going to do this. So we need 225 in the big cups. Could have poured my micas in already, but that's fine. We got plenty of time. We're using the slow. So we got 225 there. Go for 100 here. And 225 here. Even adding the 10 extra grams, I still got to give it a really good scraping to get all the stuff into my cup. But it usually works out just about perfect. Okay. Now, let's add all of our goodies here. So let's just knock out the interference red. That's 1. Let's see, I didn't say how much I'm going to put in there. So 100 grams, let's just do like a half teaspoon. Should be good. Boom. I'll get a little stick here, so I'll just put that up there for now. And the interference powders a lot of times are also that kind of pretty fine, tend to be clumpy. So you really want to kind of give it a good mix, let it sit for a little bit. Usually the clumps tend to be kind of full of air. Like if there's like just a clump of interference powder that didn't break up and is kind of hanging out underneath the resin. So if you just stir it up a bit and then just set it aside for a second, a lot of times that'll float to the top and you can kind of break that thing up. But I will definitely be coming back to that and giving it a good stirring down the road here once we get things all going. So we got our interference. Let's do our Yamagata. We were going to do a teaspoon, I believe. Yeah, a teaspoon of Yamagata. So I'm just going to do 2 half teaspoons. Doing the maths in my head. Okay. Yamagata. And we're doing, I think, let's see what a half teaspoon looks like with this glitter. It's just a red glitter, pretty fine glitter. I'll just add a little bit of sparkle in there. I think that'll be kind of fun. I might come back and add another half teaspoon of this stuff. We'll see how it looks. And then I'm going to do 0.5 grams, I think is what I said. Yeah, 0.5 of the red dye. Dump that in. Give it a stir. This is going to look good. So with the Yamagata, we got the pearl. And then with the glitter, we should get a little bit of sparkle in there. We'll have to kind of see how much that really pops out at us. Might need to add more. That's another one where if you're mixing like glitter and mica, sometimes you may need to kind of play around with how much mica you're putting in this case. If you want more glitter to kind of show up. Yeah, the glitter's not really showing there. I'm going to do another half teaspoon of glitter for sure. Might even go even more. I may have put too much Yamagata in there. It may not really do what I wanted it to. We'll have to see. I may adjust on the second round of these for the Pen Blank Club. I may make an adjustment on the Yamagata and just see what that, if I can change that. There's a little bit. I don't know. I think the Yamagata is kind of taking it over. So I'm going to do one more, so 1.5. Let's just see if we can get... Effectively, you can put as much glitter as you want in this stuff. It'll just turn super thick before anything, like you have any problems. I think this is going to be very metallic. I think I can see the glitter in there. They're very fine particles, so I think what we're getting is basically like a very metallic looking red. Is what we're going to end up with, which is not bad. It's what I wanted, but could have maybe if I would have maybe backed off about half of the Yamagata, we might be able to get a little bit more of the kind of glitter, almost like a metallic flake look in like paint, cars. But I still think we might get that. Let's see, white we're doing 0.5 gram. So really not much of the dye itself. And then we'll add our Sheeta. Technically, I probably should have done the Sheeta first. It's a little bit, out of all of them, it's probably the clumpiest, and you're probably best off getting the clumpy one in earlier. While, the resin's super thin, but it's not a big deal. And then 1 teaspoon, we'll just do 2 halves again of the Sheeta. Might have got a little bit of red glitter in there. That's okay. See how there's like kind of clumps of it? I will say that the Sheeta, the eye candy one, is probably the least clumpy of a micro pearl that I've seen. The actual micro pearl, that was from Pearlex brand. Man, that one is just clumpy. Like no matter what. fresh or been in the drawer for 3 years, it's just very clumpy, and you're going to have to sit there and stir and stir and stir and stir some more. So going back to this, there's a couple little chunks. I don't know if you can see those unmixed chunks. They're not bad in this one, but so we'll give that a nice mix up. That ought to be good. I don't really find that most of them just general mica powders. Usually they stir in pretty well, like Yamagata. Don't worry about that so much. Definitely some little clumps going on in there. So I'm gonna just stir this. And then I was saying that a lot of times like the big clumps will float, but even still, sometimes they don't float. And so you really want to, you'll get used to, you'll know which ones are kind of clumpy. It'll just seem clumpy. It won't just kind of break apart when you dump it in there. It'll stay in like a ball when you dump it in the cup. And you'll know, okay, I gotta do a little bit more stirring on this one. But I really love the pearl of this. It's like I said, it looks like a pearl. Exactly like a pearl on the micros. All right, so let's put this away. Put our dyes away. See what temperature. So I'm probably going to pour these at about 95 or about there. 94. I think that'll be good. So like I said, you get this, it's just this kind of weird aurora looking effect that it's like it's white, but it has this like glowy red with the interference. I love that. And then if you add black, it really pops it out. It's going to kind of change the nature of that look. Okay, I'll do a little bit of this one in the middle. And then we'll do our white. And I'm kind of pouring largish pours on each one of these. Definitely not small. I want to try to give it clumpy colors. I mean, it's still going to like, it's not going to be like a blob. I'd have to wait till a really high temperature to get that kind of effect. But we're also not going for very small amounts, like thin stripes. But because it's a liquid, it's still going to mix together, and we're not going to just get like layered colors. But I don't think I'm going to even stir these. If you stir it up, you're going to get like thinner strings. Like when you do the stirring thing, that will kind of break up the colors a little bit more. We'll get a little bit more blob type color without stirring it. But you can also kind of mix things together a little bit with stirring. So, you'll get two different kind of looks if you decide to stir or not. These would probably be pretty good Christmas ones too. Kind of candy cane-ish, but man, look at those colors. I think those are going to be pretty awesome for Valentine's Day. So let's get this guy in our pressure pot over here. Really excited to see how that glitter, the red, turns out. Hoping that it gets, that kind of metallic, real metallic look. But, it's, I don't know if you guys could tell, but I mean, the Yamagata, it's definitely mostly Yamagata looking, pearly kind of thing. But I'm hoping that we've got kind of like a metallic flake pearl going on in there. That was what I was hoping for anyway. And then we'll pull our little mold over here and do a little bit of this. don't have a whole lot of red left. We got a little bit. I think I got a little bit of interference as well. That'll be a fun burl. Might even give this just a little, you know, little stir there. Get my sticks cleaned off here. Chuck them. And real quick, I just like to get my sticks clean so they're ready for next time. So just bear with me 1 second here. So do this. You know me, I'm a little OCD. It's cool. I like to just hit them with a little acetone. I don't have to worry if there's any dyes or anything on that for the next time. Ruining my grand vision. All right. Got it. Get out of my way. There we go. So what do you guys think? How are these going to turn out? What do you think about these ones? Would you guys have done anything different? I'm actually curious. Any thoughts on the pour? Like I said, the glitter, I could see adjusting the ratios between and actually before I move on, I'm going to put 1.5 teaspoons of the glitter in there. I think I could probably go with like a 1/2 teaspoon of Yamagata and then maybe stay with the 1.5 teaspoons of the glitter. Kind of see how that turns out. It'd be interesting. I don't know if it would make a huge change or not. I think one of the factors with that, and the reason why I chose the numbers that I did in the beginning is coming off of the other glitters, they were bigger glitter chunks. And like the bigger the glitter chunk, the less it's going to pop out kind of a little bit more. And I think those like super fine glitter particles, that's the problem, is those other things kind of overtook them a little bit more. So I don't know. Even if I drop the Yamagata by half, I don't know if it's going to be like if I didn't have that glitter or if I didn't even have any mica powder in there, like where that glitter really takes over. It's kind of an interesting one. Sometimes the super fine things are a little bit harder to actually get that glitter effect. And if I was going for just that stuff, I'd have to put a ton of it in there to really make it like very glittery. Let's say they'd be more, unless you like literally just fill a ton of it, like where the blank you can't even barely see through it. It would be a lot sparser, almost like micro pearl, or not micro, almost like the micro starlight, where there'd just be like little points. So the smaller the glitter particle is, the more you're going to have to put in there to really make it like pop out at you. And I haven't really done anything with that one for a while. So I don't clean off the top of the mold actually. The reason I don't do that, so I actually do that on purpose. I over pour. If I've got a 5.5 inch or whatever this is, 5 1/4, what are these things? Yeah, so this is a 3/4 inch by 5 1/4 tall mold. If I just pour it up to the rim, because I could have done that. I could have not made a giant mess where it's blobbing over. If I pour it up to the rim, I'm not going to end up with a 5 1/4 inch blank. It's probably going to drop an 1/8 inch. And the reason for that is there's air bubbles in the resin, but then I put it in the pressure pot and all those air bubbles get collapsed. And what ends up happening is some people think that their blanks shrunk or something. And they're like, why are my blanks shrinking? It's not, the resin is not going anywhere. They're not shrinking in there. What's happening is the volume taken up by all the air bubbles that were in the resin has gone away, and the level goes down. So what I try to do to combat that, because like I would prefer that these were like 5.5 inch molds, because what I want is about a 5.25 inch blank at the end. So I over pour most of my molds, that way if it does go down because of that air drop, it's not going to go significantly below the rim. I'm going to get about, it's still not going to really be a 5.25 inch blank probably, but I like to chop off the end, and it's getting pretty close. Like it's over 5 inches usually. So that's why I do that. I don't wipe it off. And what you do is you can just usually, depending on how much of a blob, like I also don't necessarily recommend on these silicone molds to make like this doming mound of extra resin. It's going to be hard to break it off. But usually if you've just got it, you know, you've like I did, like you got a little bit of a pool over top of all the holes, kind of thin though still. And you might have to kind of play around with this if you're going to try to do this. But if it's super thick, it may be really hard to get that thing kind of cracked off the tops. But usually all I have to do, and sometimes there's something that's a little bit worse, it's a little thicker somewhere, but I just do this when I'm demolding, and that usually kind of cracks it off, and you can just kind of, especially on a new mold, you can just peel off that extra top thing. I probably have some in the, here's a sample. I actually just demolded this today. So you can just, you know, peel this thing off and you're good to go. Got some funky resin or something on my mold. But like I said, if it gets too thick, you might find that it's kind of tough. If that's the case, if you've over poured it and like you're having a seriously tough time like cracking that thing off, what I actually recommend you do is grab like a hammer or something hard, maybe like a wrench, and just literally tap it, like smack it. That should help kind of crack that stuff off. You know, don't kill it, but you know, you should be able to kind of crack it if you hit it. I've tried like popping it off with like a screwdriver, and that does not work. That's going to demolish your mold before it does anything else, because you have no leverage. So I would, and I did that for a long time, where I would try and get like a wedge underneath that thing and like pry it off. But what ends up happening is you just tend to rip the mold. So that doesn't work. It's just better. You can even grab like a screwdriver and just smack it. And usually that tends to work. You still may damage the mold. That's why like there's kind of this sweet spot where it's, you know, you're adding a little extra to the top, but it's not like overboard, super thick. So it's kind of hard. You'll have to kind of play with it if you want to try it. Let's see here. I think they'll look pretty good. I don't know. Let's see here. Yeah, and I don't use spray release. If I was using an epoxy resin, I might do that. I just don't find with Alumilite Clear, generally with your urethane based resins, I don't think there's an advantage. What you end up having is a goopy blank at the end. It's no different. And part of the reason why I switched to silicone molds coming from PVC pipes was I had to spray you have to spray the pipes if you're using PVC, otherwise the blank will get stuck in there. And I was just sick and tired of having to spray these things, and then you demold them and they're all goopy and you got to wipe them off and then cut them and all this stuff, and they're slippery. I don't know. There's an argument to be made, and I've said this to people before, that, you know, the mold release sprays do tend to make it a little easier. I don't have trouble demolding them. I use air. You know, I got a blowgun thing. I use air and I just go in there and they shoot right out. And I've tried using mold release on it, and a lot of people say that if you use mold release on a silicone mold, it'll extend the life of it. It won't deteriorate as fast. And what I found was it didn't matter, because I actually did an experiment where I had one that I made sure I knew there was a specific one that I sprayed every single time and it seemed to deteriorate just as fast. But I was just wasting spray stuff. So I'm not saying that you should do that, but maybe try it and see, is it really helping to spray it? I don't know. I know Chad usually sprays his. Actually, what I found was it seemed like the coloration and stuff of the mold actually got worse. I don't know. I don't use it in the molds. Silicone molds, no matter what, are going to have a finite life. So just, be aware of that. They're not going to last forever, especially if you're producing a lot of blanks, a lot of overturn in the same mold. But I don't know. I don't want to steer people. The reason I'm a little wishy-washy is I don't want to steer people wrong. But the fact is, I don't use mold release, and I don't see the need to personally. For Alumilite clear or clear slow. Epoxies are much harder on silicones, on molds in general. It doesn't even matter. It could be HDPE or whatever. Epoxies tend to just beat the death out of molds. Like, I think they get hotter is one of the things. And I think the chemicals in there just tend to break down the materials like way faster. So I would probably use a mold release if I was doing epoxy-based resin blanks. But with Alumilite clear and clear slow, and I think it has to do with the urethane-based resin isn't as harsh on molds. That's a lot of people have kind of seen that over the years. The other thing with Alumilite clear slow specifically versus the just regular clear from Alumilite, the slow version, we talked about this earlier, it doesn't heat up as high. The formulation is intended to be poured. I mean, you can literally pour a 5-gallon bucket of this stuff all at once, and it's probably not going to overheat because the curing temperature is lower. It's been engineered to do that so you can pour it like a bowling ball size casting it all at once. So that's another thing, is that the lower the heat, that the resin generates as it's exotherming and curing, the less wear and tear you're going to have on your molds also. So that might play into it. It may be just the material, the urethane. But I just find that you don't really need mold release with these things. But every single time you're going to need it if you're using PVC pipes, for sure. So let's see here. Will silicone molds degrade over time? I don't know about that. I mean, eventually, probably. But I mean, it should take years, probably. And like, if it's being stored in in Tucson in the garage, and it's 150 degrees in the garage, over the courses of time, you might be able to preserve it a little bit more. Like, I'm just thinking oxygen and things are kind of interacting with it, heat. You might, I don't know. I'm going to say I have no clue. I would say that it would take a long time. And one thing you maybe could do is put it in a Ziploc bag or something, or put it in a tub, just so you have one more barrier between UV rays and oxygen and things. But I don't know. I don't think it's going to be too terrible. To just kind of leave it. I think that you're getting definitely a lot more wear and tear by putting chemicals in it that are heating up and curing, doing stuff, having a chemical reaction. So Mark, would a little of the Ghost Red in the Yamagata and glitter? Yeah, you can do that. I was saying that you could add, do a dirty pour kind of thing, or you could even just add a little bit of that interference powder in addition to all in the same cup and mix it all in. And you might get a little bit, what's funny is I actually thought about doing that, mixing the interference with a mica, not for this specific project. Like a week or two ago, I was like, oh, maybe one time on the stream, like a random passing thought, I was like, maybe I should just put mica with interference. I think we should try that sometime, because I think you're gonna get a little bit more of that Aurora glow, maybe just a little bit. It kind of depends on how much of each one, but yeah, it will change the look of what's going on for sure. So cool, very cool. Good question. Let's see. Michael Wilson was saying, I need to start making these. Yeah, get in there, do it. It's fun. All right, so let's see here. If you're using your silicone mold 2 to 3 times a week, it just depends, honestly. I couldn't even tell you. What you'll notice is when it starts to degrade, one, it's going to be harder to demold the blanks. I got a couple examples here, and honestly, I don't know. Like, I don't know when I put these into service and how many blanks I made in each one of these. Like, I don't care. Like, when when it's time to replace it, I just do. I haven't thought about it really. It should. What would you say, 2 to 3 times a week? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you should easily get a year out of it, I think. And I mean, it'll still keep going, but so this is a brand new mold. This is I maybe used it once. All right, so this is brand new. You can see the color, and these both were made with the same silicone. Everything was exactly the same on them. But you can see how it's like kind of still translucent looking, and it looks kind of fresh and nice. This one is like, it's like white almost. All right, and so I've used this one a lot, and it's like the top just feels like rigid almost, where this is all gummy, you know, it feels like a gummy worm. This is like almost like it has like a skin over it. It's just kind of not great. And even inside, it feels different. Like it's almost hard. All right, so that's what you're going to notice when these things start hitting the end of their life. You'll see kind of like a color change. It's going to, you know, compared to the side of this thing, this feels spongy, whereas like this is like almost like it has like a layer of plastic on top or something. It's harder, smoother feeling, slippery. But it ends up, they don't want to come out as easily. That's what's going to happen. And like I said, you can still use it. I mean, I could still use these just fine. It would just be a little bit more difficult for me to demold blanks out of them. They just tend to stick more. But, you know, doable. I mean, you can continue using them. Eventually, I think you're just going to find that you're like, okay, I'm kind of done with this. Let me get a new one. The other thing, talking about how I kind of leave a little bit of extra, I over pour it. Getting that over pour thing off of the top also becomes much more difficult. And it just gets to the point where when you go get a new one, like that thing, everything just kind of pops out really easily. That's what the difference is. And I even tried using spray release, and it still didn't really help a whole lot. So eventually they just kind of get kind of, you know, the surface of it just gets kind of hard and yucky and tends to want to kind of really grab onto the blanks. So it doesn't want to let go of the blanks as much. But they're still usable. So, I mean, you should get years probably out of your molds. It just, eventually you're going to be like, if I just get a new one, this is going to be a little bit easier to deal with. So, let's see here. Sounds like next week. Well, next week we'll be turning one of these guys up. So maybe the next in 2 weeks we might. Yeah, I think we'll definitely have to try that. It should be fun. I'm not sure what we're going to do on the next one, but it should be good. All right, so I think that's about it. So yeah, Crafteritas. I hope that helped out a little bit. I always like to share, you know, like little random things that I've found over the years. I'm a big believer in like, it helps to understand what's going on with some of this stuff. You can tell someone to do this or do that, and you know, whatever, just do it this way. I don't find that to be as helpful as explaining. And I know it's tough because some people may not do as well with, it doesn't matter, or like they don't work that way. I'm the type of person that I'd rather understand how this thing is working, like what's going on with this stuff. You know, like if I can, like talk to like a chemist, tell me what's happening with this you know, degradation of my mold, so I can understand, you know, what, if you understand the process of what's occurring, especially in the case of like resins, I usually try to explain like what's happening with this. so that you understand, you can apply that knowledge and maybe use it in a different way than me just saying do this or do that or don't do this or don't do that. So hopefully it helps. So yeah, it's tough. Everybody does learn kind of differently. So I have a feeling that I'm extremely over talkative and in depth. Like I don't think a lot of people like. there's a good amount of people that probably do not like the super in depth stuff. They're like, shut up, just tell me how to do it. But I can't help it. I want to share whatever I've found out, and hopefully it'll help you. So if a mic is lumpy, can you use alcohol? Yeah, you could do that. One of the really tough ones is so from eye candy, like the UFO green, and I think there's one called like Firebird Red or something. Yeah, Firebird Red. They're like the neon one. These things are horrible. Like you have to add something to this to make it some liquid, basically. Otherwise, I mean, you'll just sit there and keep mixing it for 3 years. In those cases, also, what can help a lot actually is using a paddle mixer. Do I have one of those? They make like little ones that are really useful for smaller cups. I don't even know where. Well, you can even make your own. You can like 3D print something like this. I actually got this idea from Cocoon Blanks. It works pretty well. So you can use like a drill mixer, and that can actually get some of these like chunky powder type things mixed in even better. The problem you run into is it depends on, how big is your cup and how big is the little paddle thing. If you don't have a 3D printer, they do make, okay, here we go. That's where they are. I don't do this a lot personally. I don't really find that I need to. So just to give you an example, like I use these when I'm doing like large pours, like bowl blanks and things like that, where there's like, half a gallon of resin, something like that. But you're using a giant mixing cup, like a big bucket kind of thing. And so this is great, but this isn't going to work in a cup, a regular cup. So they make these little mini paddle mixers you can get on Amazon. I don't have a link or anything, but I'm pretty sure I got these on Amazon. So you can find little mini paddle mixers. But like I said, if you got a 3D printer or know somebody that can print you out some stuff, you can find little mixing paddle things, and then you just basically stick it on like this is like a bamboo dowel, or something. And just kind of, get the dimensions right, glue in a stick of some sort to the back of it, or even just 3D print it. I think you're probably better off like using like a wood stick so you can really clamp down on it without breaking it. I guess if it was like a solid plastic 3D printed thing, it wouldn't, the jaws wouldn't like crush it or whatever. But either way, different ways of doing it, and that can kind of help. But a little bit of, and you got to be careful. You don't need a lot. A very small amount of like a denatured alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, added to those kind of thicker, chunkier powders. I find that with like the micro pearl, it's never so thick that I can't just use a stick, and as long as I stir enough, it's fine. With the UFO green and the Firebird, like those kind of, I think they call them like a neon color. I don't know. There's like a line of them, and they're like a neon color from eye candy. Those things are just impossible. Like you pretty much have to add some sort of a liquid to it, or I think you could maybe get the job done if you just use like an electric mixer, like a paddle type thing. Eventually it would get in there. So the verbal processing is helpful. Good. Micro with alcohol. Yeah, but you got to really be careful. I don't recommend doing that. If you can stay away from it, you don't really want to add alcohol to resin. You see a lot of crafty people, like the people making like the jewelry and little things where you put it in the mold and you just take it out of the mold and you're good. When you add, acetone or alcohol or any other like chemical, even like the liquid pigments and stuff, there's other chemicals in there that can kind of alter the results of the resin. So just be kind of careful. Even I don't even really recommend using alcohol inks necessarily that much if you can get away with not having to use those. Because you're adding alcohol to the resin. That's going to thin the resin. It's going to change the chemical properties of it a little bit. It's not going to ruin anything, but if you add too much, it could make, your blanks like brittle or other things. I don't even know what the effects really are, and it probably depends on a lot of factors. I don't know that you could just talk to a chemist and they'd be like, well, this is what's going to happen. It depends on what formula, what ingredients are in the resin itself, and how does that affect it. But I'd rather personally not do that if I don't have to. That way I know what to expect on the lathe. If you're just casting something in place, taking it out of the mold and that's what it is, you're not going to, cut it and turn it and sand it and do all these other things to it that we do. I don't think I'd care at that point. As long as it cures, it's fine. But when you're, using power tools on it later, I'd rather not possibly introduce brittleness or other weird factors into there. So I'm just a little caution. It's not going to hurt anything typically, but just be aware if you add too much of that stuff, it could cause issues. And I think I'm a lot more on the side of I don't want to add stuff that I don't know what the effects are going to be, because I sell blanks. Like I don't want to put a bunch of alcohol in blanks, sell them to people, and then they're all blowing up on people's lathes and I get a bunch of emails and phone calls. So I'm a little bit more, sensitive to that kind of stuff. I'd rather just avoid that headache personally. If you're just making some blanks in your shop, it may not really matter that much, but be aware if you add other chemicals in there, it could affect things. So, handheld latte foamer. I don't know. So the one thing about stirring, and even with like a paddle mixer, the one thing about when you're stirring your resin up is you really need to make sure that you're scraping the sides and the bottom of the cup. And I just sometimes worry that those paddle mixers aren't really scraping the sides and the bottom as well as like a stick. So that's another reason why I don't use those as much. I really, really focus, if I am using a paddle mixer, on like scraping, like hitting the sides of the cup and doing all that stuff. I would imagine that like a paddle mixer, it's moving that stuff around so much that you're probably getting most of that stuff off the sides and edges anyway, or bottom. But I got to be honest, I don't really know what a latte foamer is. So let me look that before I even talk about it. Latte foamer. Yeah, I don't think I would do that. It's just kind of vibrating. Probably. Oh, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I would use that. I don't know. I'm just going to say I don't know. I have no clue. I personally wouldn't spend the money on buying one to see if it works. I don't think it would work as well as like a, where it's physically spinning. I think that's better. But you could try it. I found that the little 3D print thing, I found that online. I could not tell you where. Probably like Thingiverse or something like that. I probably looked up honestly, I think you could probably look up like epoxy mixing paddle or something like that. I think that's what it was, like listed as the name. So I just found one, and then the only thing was I did have to kind of print a couple different sizes to get the hole perfect for like a 1/4 inch dowel. 1 gallon paint mixer. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so for the STL, I didn't design it myself. No, not all they're not all, the Alumilite dyes are not alcohol based. I don't know what they're made out of. There's lots of different liquids that can be added to dyes or pigments. Quite a few different ones, honestly. So no, you'll smell it. The Alumilite dyes don't smell like alcohol, but if you open up an alcohol dye, it smells like alcohol. And here's the nice thing: if you really want to make, or if you really need an alcohol ink, well, okay, so a couple things. When it comes to alcohol inks, the nice thing about those is you can get very specific colors. Somehow you can get almost any color, which you probably can't make yourself in some cases. They may not get light enough with the colors that you have available. But what I was going to say is you can actually make your own alcohol inks using Alumilite dyes as well. Just add some of the dye and then alcohol. And you can make your own alcohol inks that way. But the one advantage to alcohol inks that sometimes I have used them, like pink is a tough color, like a very specific shade of pink, or I'm trying to think of other ones like purples. Some things with Alumilite dyes, if you add just a very, very tiny amount, it'll work where it's transparent like an alcohol ink. But alcohol inks, there's so little dye in there that you can get them very transparent. The problem is some of the dyes, like the blue, the purple, I don't know, those the green from Alumilite are so dark, and they're more like a cooler shade of like green or blue or whatever. It's very hard to get a very specific brighter shade by mixing them together yourself. So sometimes it's just better to get an alcohol ink that's the right color and just go with it. But like I said, just be a little careful with how much you're adding in there, just to be on the safe side. So yeah, cool. Yeah, Amazon should have a few of those little paddle things and stuff. So, all right, so I think that's about it. I got to get rolling here, guys. Like I said, I got to get down. We're doing Christmas again. We're just rolling it out and continuing the fun. So anyway, guys, I hope you had fun watching this one. Hopefully we answered a couple of really good questions and talked about some cool stuff today. That was fun. So next week we'll turn up one of these blanks and see how we did. Like I said, I may play, I'll have to make another batch for the pen blank club of these, and I think I'm going to slightly adjust the red, where I'm going to drop the Yamagata just a little bit, and then probably just keep that glitter the same amount, and just see if there's really any difference in looks. I'm not going to turn two different ones up or anything like that, but just kind of look at the blanks, and I'll have an idea kind of when I'm stirring it up, like, how does this feel? Does it look kind of the same or different than the one we did on the stream? And I'll share the results of that and let you know if that did really have an effect. I may have to just cut out the Yamagata to get more of that, like a real glitter, because the particles of that glitter are so small. It may just be that you're not really going to get a glittery look with those things when you add something else in there. I don't know. So let's see. All right. So anyway, guys, I hope you have a great rest of the day. Hopefully you'll be able to get in the shop and have some fun and make some cool stuff. And yeah, so anyway, I'll see you guys all next week, and I hope you have a great night.